Hi, True Avatars. This is episode 16 of your queer video game podcast. I am Zoe Wild, a transgender and bisexual woman. My pronouns are she, her. And yes, what you are hearing is the new True Avatars theme song. Isn't it awesome and adorable?
It's so good. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to have a theme. This is unreal.
It's so good. And I was like, we were going slowly with it, me and the composer. We were just taking our time and figuring it out. I commissioned it probably 1 or 2 months ago. I was like, we should get a theme song. The show is a bit just talking and it needs a little character.
I love that. Oh, that's awesome. It's so exciting. Oh my gosh.
So it was composed by Diana Kotzin. Diana is a queer film composer who so graciously agreed to write the theme song for the podcast, plus more music you're going to hear later in the episode. Diana can be found on Instagram at Diana Kotzin Music, and Kotzin is spelled Kotzin. Please go check out her work. She's incredibly talented and an incredibly wonderful person. And to Diana personally, thank you so much for the amazing music. It adds so much personality to this little podcast.
Yes, thank you.
So this week is another packed episode. First off, I'm joined once again by Ekamy from Twitch. Ekamy is a bisexual woman who is exploring and considering pansexuality and demisexuality. Welcome back, Ekamy.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be back.
Yeah, I'll always love having you on, and Amy Lynn too, and I love it when I can have you both together, but since this is just half the episode, I thought I'd have you on this week and Amy Lynn on last week, so...
Yeah, I was actually just listening, at the time of recording this, I was just listening to the last, the episode that you recorded with Amy Lynn, which I think you were saying was, the longest, the longest episode for this podcast, I think?
Yeah, I underestimated how much time we'd spend on the GLAAD. And first off, we always spend too much time on the news, but also the GLAAD report was actually much more content filled than I realized when I listed it out in the notes. So
yeah, it's great discussions though. No, it was really nice to listen to. Liked it quite a bit. And the discussion on Sonic 3, the movie. It's every time that Amy Lynn is talking about anything Sonic, I'm just more and more convinced that I either need to play Sonic or that I need to watch the movies, because they just seem like the movies themselves seem just I don't know, a nice love letter to the series. And I've played a little bit of Sonic, but not really enough. Although I have seen a lot of really funny playthroughs from the Game Grumps and all that. So
yeah, no, her excitement for the Sonic games has definitely rubbed off on me. Every time I pick up a Sonic game, they always go so low in price. I pick it up and then I'm like, I'm going to play this tomorrow. And then something happens or another game comes up. So I've got literally all the Switch Sonic games, save for maybe Colors on my shelf, and Forces. I used to have Forces. Forces is shit. Don't play it. Awful. Awful game.
Yeah.
And it was the first one I ever played. And I was like, how bad could it possibly be? Maybe if I'm new to the series, I won't notice how bad
Oh, no.
Anyway, so I have all of them on my shelf thanks to her excitement. It's just rubbed off on me. But the movies I was already into before I really even knew that Amy Lynn was a Sonic fan. Because before I transitioned was when the first movie came out, and I knew Amy Lynn a little bit through school, but I didn't know her super well, and I certainly didn't know she was into Sonic. I just knew that she was into Pokemon. There's a cute story with me, Amy Lynn and Devona, where when we met, not met the first time, but there was one time we got together before Amy Lynn and I both had transitioned, and neither of us knew anything about our queerness.
Huh.
It was when the Pokemon Sword and Shield Dexit controversy was happening. I was so mad about it. I was like, this game looks terrible, blah blah blah. I ended up playing it and loving it, but at the time I was giving them both crap for wanting to play this game.
Oh no.
I was like, no, you can't support this. This is terrible. The first HD full-fledged Pokemon Switch game cannot be this terrible. And I just went off on them. And I realized later, I was like, oh, I was an asshole.
Oh, it's okay. We all get heated sometimes.
We do. And then I was just left for anyway, because I bought it day one. And I was like, this is great, even though I hate it.
It's that's kind of the curse of being a fan of Pokemon these days. So that's fair, because there's some good, but then there's some stuff that could be better with quality and things. So yeah,
for sure. And then for anyone who wants to hear it, for anyone who wants to hear it, I can't believe my voice just cracked. I think I'm going to leave that in because I don't know why my voice is
Hell yeah.
I'm a 30-year-old.
We're doing it live.
Oh my god, do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Live. Anyway, so episode 5, I had Amy Lynn and Devona on. I've had Amy Lynn on a lot more than Devona because I'm never sure of Devona's scheduling, but they were both on in episode 5. It's an adorable, amazing episode. But go check out that episode. They're both on it. They're both great to talk to, and also they talk a little bit about Undertale. And as soon as they get going on Undertale, it's like a train that you can't stop.
Yeah,
So,
Andy
yeah.
makes Undertale.
That's another game series that I need to play. As in the game Undertale, but also oh my god, what's the Deltarune, thank you. Oh my god, why did I forget that? Anyway, yeah, I need to play both of those. I've seen playthroughs of both series, but yeah, I think I have Undertale on Steam, but I think was Deltarune, I think episode 1 or something was free for Deltarune, or maybe both episodes that are out have been free. I don't know. I need to play them. That's
as far as I know, I think both are free, and also I think it was Deltarune we talked about in episode 5, not Undertale, although it might have been both. But in my head, because it's just rearranged, it's the same logo and font. They just rearranged the letters to make Undertale into Deltarune, so I think that's why my brain just gets them confused. But yeah, I think for anyone listening, Deltarune should be at least episode 1. You're right, is free. I'm just gonna quickly look this up because
yeah.
Free queer game. It's a free queer game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember you were in the episode. It was either that episode or another episode, but you were talking about like the character Noelle and Susie. Susie's the purple dinosaur-esque character, I think. And there's like definitely like implied, well, not implied, it's confirmed basically that that Susie, I think, has a crush on Noelle. So yeah. Hey, it's cute.
And one chapter, it says in the description for Deltarune, try chapter 1 and 2 for free now. I don't know if that's gonna like change because it looks like it's on Steam. It's listed as a demo.
Okay.
For the main game, so it's possible once chapters 3 and 4. Although they're gonna launch separately, so I'm not sure how this release is going to work actually, because it looks like Deltarune is considered one game on Steam with a demo for chapters 1 and 2 in one package.
Interesting.
So
okay.
I'm not sure what they're going to do here, although it does say genre free to play.
Toby Fox, you mad lad, what are you planning?
Yeah. Maybe that'll be listed as DLC and the main game will be free. I don't know. And the main game being chapters 1 and 2, for example.
Yeah, I wondered if it was going to be a similar thing like how Life is Strange did it, where episode 1 was free. And then, like, the other chapters, I think, were, like not expensive. Well, I mean, not expensive for me, but that they were, like, the first episode was free and then the rest were paid. And then I think now you can just buy the game as a complete version, but yeah. Yeah,
I'm looking that up, too. And, yeah, it's like episode 1 is its own listing, and then the other episodes have their own listings, but then, yeah, you can also buy the full game just as its own thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, and I think we're gonna stop talking about Deltarune now because Amy Lynn's gonna listen to this and she's gonna find us and she's gonna kill us.
She's like, why didn't you advise me? Nah, she's great.
So, but just in the interest of time, since we do always spend a lot of time on the news, and I want to talk about also what we've been playing. But so the first half of the episode, we have Ekamy here. We're going to discuss the news, what we've been playing, and all that stuff. Like, there's like the Horizon Zero Dawn movie. Also, the season 2 has a kind of early state. Nintendo Switch rumors. The LA wildfires are affecting developers too, and there's a whole bunch of other stories. So we're going to talk about those in just a bit after we talk about what we've been playing. As usual, the format will stay the same. And then for the second half of the episode, Ekamy is going to head out because I have a pre-recorded interview that I recorded last Tuesday. And we're recording on Sunday, January 12th right now. But last Tuesday, January 7th, I want to say, I recorded another interview with Frank Hopewell-Smith, a marketing research director who's worked on a bunch of big games that I'm 100% certain everyone listening to this podcast has heard of. So, Ekamy, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I've been playing more than I usually do in the past few weeks, actually, because I often will say, oh, I'm just streaming like my usual 3 games that I stream on Twitch. But I just last night, actually, I tried out Marvel Rivals, and it was interesting because I normally don't really play this type of games. Like Overwatch didn't really interest me. I'm not interested in Valorant or anything like that. But I have seen quite a few Marvel movies and read some comics, so I thought I'd give it a shot. It was pretty fun. And especially for like a free game, like if you just kind of want to go on and like just get into a fight with your friends, like that seems like it as weird as that sounds, it was good. I quite enjoyed it. And another
I play
one...
Mario Party when I want to fight with my friends.
I mean, very valid. Yeah, it's That's the game where everyone starts out like, wow, we can't wait to play, and then just like there's a horrible wall that's been put between everybody. Just like, oh, I'm never speaking with you again. I also recently started this game called No Straight Roads, which is basically it's a game that is rhythm focused. It's very colorful. It's about like trying to bring back rock music in a society that's very EDM focused. I would basically describe it as like this game, No Straight Roads, walked so Hi-Fi Rush could run. Like it's kind of that, very similar with that. And it came out in like 2020, so like a couple years before Hi-Fi Rush. It's by a Malaysian developer too, and it's really cool because I don't actually I think the I don't recognize the voice actors, but they do sound like a few of them have an accent. So I wonder if maybe they are Malaysian. But there is definitely one character named DK West, who's a rapper, and he speaks Malay and English. He kind of does like a mixture when he talks and also when he raps. It's so cool. So highly recommend it if you want like rhythm kind of based fighting game. And it's very funny too. It's very cute and very funny. And the other game that I wanted to mention is, after listening to the episode that you had when you were speaking with Zoe Strand, who's working on a loft, I tried out the loft demo because I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like, if I play too many like sandboxy, open world kind of exploratory kind of games, but I tried it out and it was a lot of fun. I really liked there's like a little bit of customization that actually there's a good amount of customization, but more specifically with like when you design your glider, and I thought that was really cool. I really like that. It feels really nice to fly around and like glide around and just go to different islands and stuff. And like, it was so good because I figured out the gliding and I was like, great, I'm going to go explore islands. And I like got to the first one and I was like, cool, I'm going to, gather some resources. Great. And then I landed on the second island and then a mushroom tried to kill me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm terrified now.
That happened to me too.
Oh,
a walking
no.
mushroom just came out of nowhere into my peripheral vision and I was just like dead.
Oh no. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm really excited for the release. It's early access, I think, right? That's coming out soon.
I'm glad you mentioned the loft because this week, and let me just confirm the day, but this week, I think it's Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, so Zoe Straw has been working on this game. She did talk about it in episode 11. The game is supposed to release in early access this week. And there is currently a demo that's like, I think, pre-alpha on the shop right now. So January 15th. So that will be Wednesday, actually. It launches on Steam in early access. And anyway, so Zoe Straw is going to be on next week's podcast to talk about how the launch went. The launch party as well. I think she wants to talk about that too. And we're going to talk about other things. I'm really excited to hear how an early access launch goes because I feel like it could be kind of crazy because like, I feel like it can be kind of wild because like it's still early access. Like the game isn't done, right? Like you could launch with like a big bug. You could launch like with it perfectly. You're trying to get feedback anyway, right? So early access games are usually cheaper too, right?
Yeah, so they'll get good feedback. Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah. How about you?
I've been playing a little bit of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I still haven't gotten to. I found out Vivian's actually a party member, which I didn't know. Or at least that's what I heard. I have not gotten to that part because I haven't had a lot of time to play games this week. I spent more time on the podcast than I have been playing video games, which is what I love most, but also like I need to play video games to be able to talk about them. And I need to find time for that. But I'm going through this section with these like little creatures in this tree and they're called punies and they're adorable. And you have like 101 of these things following you around. And like, if you like walk too close to the ledge, they fall off, and then you have to like go all the way back to the bottom of the tree. And the oldest puny, this like old lady puny, has to like scream throughout the tree, and call them back, which is like really funny and cute. And they just like skitter behind you, and they're like, Every character in this game worships Mario. It's really funny. Everyone thinks he's like they either really, really hate Mario or they're like, okay, this guy is basically like our follower and our leader.
There is no in between. There's no one who thinks, yeah, Mario, he's okay.
And all the women in the game like want him badly. They all like think he's like a hunk.
Damn. I love it.
So let's jump into the news. And there's like a bunch of like queer headlines and queer adjacent headlines. I know I've already kind of hinted at some of them, but our first headline comes from Video Games Chronicle. It seems like a lot of different gaming journalists were at this event, the CES 2025, which is the Consumer Electronics Show, where big tech companies gather to show off like technology, demos, make announcements for the year. They're showing off, I think, like TVs and stuff. There's some video game news. Mostly it's like very technical hardware stuff, but there's occasionally like stuff that trickles out like this. So anyway, I chose Video Games Chronicle because I follow that website, but I think every website had their own like, this is our news story type thing. Not referring to everyone else, but so Sony announced 2 live action movies. They announced Helldivers 2, which I'm sure some people are excited about. I had not played Helldivers, so I'm not sure. I saw someone say like, oh, a new Starship Troopers movie is coming, because I think the vibes are kind of similar.
Yeah, I think
but
so.
the one we're excited about is the Horizon Zero Dawn movie. And sorry to talk over you, Amy. I just wanted to.
No, that's cool.
I haven't actually introduced the headline yet. I'm like, I should probably say that like it's the Horizon Zero Dawn movie that's coming. Anyway, the Horizon movie is coming. And we don't really know anything. Like Sony basically just said they're making it.
Yeah.
We know that it will be live action, which I couldn't find an actual like source, like a quote from Sony saying it's live action, but Video Games Chronicle and all the other websites I looked at seemed to say that it was going to be live action. And to be honest, that makes the most sense if they would be doing this. But Sony's also really known for having really good animated movies, so they could have decided to make like an animated movie in the visual style of the games too, and I think that still would have been really cool. But there's no casting, there's no director, there's no release date. They basically just said it's live action and it exists, and that it's being distributed by Columbia Pictures, which is kind of a no-brainer if anyone's been following like Sony's movie adaptations, because Sony owns a whole bunch of things. Like they own PlayStation, they own Spider-Man, and they own Columbia Pictures, which are those 3 claims to fame. Oh, and they own the Bravia TV lines. I think if anyone knows Sony products, those are pretty much all the Sony things. And if you watch Sony movies and games too, there's also like a ton of Sony product placement. But anyway, point being here is that Columbia Pictures is making the movie. And I do know that at one point, because when I heard this headline, I was like, wasn't there a show coming from this? But apparently last July, they basically said like it was going to be happening on Netflix and a live action show based on the game. And it's not happening anymore. It kind of fell off the wayside. And I did check too. I was like, is it Horizon, like the Horizon world, or is it Horizon Zero Dawn specifically? And every headline seemed to say that it was Horizon Zero Dawn. So it seems like they're doing a straight adaptation of the game. But anyway, Ekamy, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so excited. Or I was really excited to hear about this news because, I mean, like you said, I mean, I would be very happy with either a live action or an animated. I think both both media work really well with this kind of story. And honestly, I'm really excited about what like Sony's been doing, or maybe not, like Guerrilla Games, not just Sony, but like what they've been doing with this IP lately. Like I'm excited about Lego Horizon Adventures, I think it's called, and I just haven't had an opportunity to go out and buy it yet. I mean, I'm hoping that if the adaptation of Zero Dawn, like, you know, ends up getting really good reception, it ends up like a really good, a good direction that they took, then that might mean that maybe they'll make an adaptation of Forbidden West. And then I can only hope that we'll get a wonderful actor to play the man who stole my heart in the second game named Katalo. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be really cool. And it'll open a lot more, it'll just like introduce more people to the series. And I think like they're solid games. I think they're worth playing. Yeah, I'm just interested to see what they do with it. I was like, when I heard about the news, I also thought like, oh, like who would I want to play like characters in this movie? And to be honest, there's like kind of one person who I just immediately envision as Aloy, and I don't know if like they'll get her or that she'll like audition, but I really would like to see Rose Leslie play Aloy. She was in in Game of Thrones. She was the
She's the one
Free
who
Folk.
says, you know nothing, Jon
Yeah,
Snow. She's
you
the
know nothing,
wildling.
Jon Snow. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
great.
oh, that's a good impression.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's great. I was like, oh, that would be a really good casting, I think. But I don't know if like that'll be the case. Yeah, I'm super pumped for this.
Yeah, and I hope too, if whoever they get, like I hope they at least like I know Aloy's technically not really confirmed. She's confirmed queer and she's confirmed sapphic, but we don't really know what her sexual identity is. But I hope that what we do know of her sexual identity is preserved, despite all the haters she has, and especially too all the people that not just her sapphic identity aside, I feel like people don't even focus on that because they're much more interested in like altering that one close up of her face where you can see like her pores
Oh my
that they've
God.
actually rendered in game, which is super cool. And they're like, oh, she's not conventionally pretty, so let me just use AI to make her like give her like a shitload of makeup.
Yeah, and it looks so bad. I was like, what? Yeah, I would like to see that certainly mentioned. Like one of the things that I really like about especially the first game, because I haven't finished Forbidden West, but I like the idea that like, you know, just that like Aloy has a very sapphic identity, and at the same time her character interactions with people, like everybody wants Aloy, like that's kind of like the like there's so many people who are like, oh, you wanna meet me later, and she's like, I'm good, like, you know, it's cool. So like if she's ace, that's also awesome. Like I was like, I would really like for them to keep to that. I'm hoping that they don't have like any implied like, well, she's definitely gonna go for this kind of person, or this character specifically in the movie, because they kind of they don't subscribe, I feel like, to any like certain like they don't subscribe her to any specific character, I feel like. Now granted, that might be different for the end of Forbidden West, I don't know, I haven't finished it, but I always feel like Aloy is very, you know, driven for her own journey, and like I don't know, I think that's just a really impressive thing for games lately, especially because like we have other games like I'll say Bayonetta 3, and this will be probably spoilers for Bayonetta 3. And also I
Jump
I
ahead
wanna...
2 minutes if you don't want to be spoiled for Bayonetta 3.
Yeah. And again, it also, this is just me like reading what I've like reading about it. I haven't actually had the chance to play the game. I love the Bayonetta games, but I just haven't played 3 yet. But apparently with you know, or sorry, as the Bayonetta series has been implying, like there's a lot of implied like a big like a relationship with Bayonetta and John, like hugely. That's like been, you know, like Bayonetta like likes to like be flirty and like, you know, play around with people, but like there's definitely something with her and John, and you're like, okay, cool, like that's the vibe. There's another character named Luca in the series who's like a silly like falls on his face a lot. He flirts with Bayonetta, and she just kind of, I don't know, kicks him in the face, and he's like, and he just, you know, like he didn't, like he's just kind of there. He's very sweet, but you know, and apparently at the end of Bayonetta 3 or towards the end, there's some kind of confession of love between her and Luca, and I went freaking excuse me, like that's like why would you do that, especially for like the third game of all games? Like you just decide to be like, you know what, no, she's actually like not, I mean, she could be bi. At that point I'm like, okay, well, I definitely think she's bi, but like I don't know, I didn't really like that they, you know, for 2 games they were like, yeah, there's like an implied thing here, and she's gay, and that's cool, and I'm like, hell yeah. But like also Luca, like I don't know, I just never really saw anything really between them, so I'm like, but I mean, I haven't played the third game, so, you know, maybe I'll see the scene and I'll think, okay, but I will, if I have to accept that canon, I will accept her as bisexual.
Well, the thing about Bayonetta, and I don't know if this is true, so you know more about the Bayonetta series than I do, and I know you haven't played the third game, but what I've understanding is that the Bayonetta in 3 is not the same one who's in 1 and 2.
Oh, really? Oh.
That's what I feel like I read. Like it's a different. I don't know if it's a confirmed thing either. It could be a fan theory that's like semi like implied in the games. But like apparently there's another character in the first 2 games who's taken up like the mantle
Oh,
Supposedly,
interesting.
again, I don't know very much about Bayonetta, if anything, like everything I know has been like whatever you've told me in the
Right.
past.
Yeah.
Um, but I was reading when Bayonetta 3 was announced, and especially when I was
Huh.
following the controversy
Yeah.
with her voice actor
Yeah.
from the first
Oh,
two games,
yeah. Yeah. Oh my
um,
gosh, yeah.
who was probably actually fired for being transphobic, which is kind of, or at least one of the reasons why she was not brought back for the
Yeah,
third
yeah.
game. But I
Yeah.
was also reading that people were like, well, it's not a big deal anyway, because technically this is a different Bayonetta, because the
Huh.
theory is that like anyway, I don't know. I don't, maybe like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
some kind
like
of death with a character in the second game, and so this has to be a different, I don't know. But
no, she's alive. I know at least for the first two games, she's alive. Like I think they left room for another game. But yeah, I mean, grain of salt. Like I mean, now I'm actually genuinely like maybe I should really play Bayonetta 3 soon because that is interesting. I know her like design for her character. In Bayonetta 3, because they usually give her a new look each game, is very much inspired by her her character model of her as a child from the first game, because she has these cute little like pigtails that are like very like voluminous and kind of sit on her shoulders a bit. So I know that's the inspiration there. Yeah, now I don't know. I'll play the game and I'll let you know.
yeah, please
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's a different, maybe the sexuality isn't as important in the third game because it's a different
Yeah.
Bayonetta.
Maybe. Yeah.
So who
Yeah.
knows? Um, and we also have a little bit more Sony game adaptation news that came out of CES, or at least it came out around the same time. I'm not sure if this actually was CES, but Last of Us Season 2 has a release date. Well, it has a release month now. So now we know it's April, which is, yeah, around the time, as I predicted, it was around the time either the game was going to, like, it was either going to debut or the game, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The game on PC comes out, I think, in March or April. And so my prediction was that the game release was either going to coincide with the beginning of the season or the end of the season. I think I was leaning towards the end when I talked about it, but it is the beginning, it sounds like. So the game is out there on PC. You can go play that and then go watch the show. I think if you're much more committed to watching the show and you're like, oh, should I play the game beforehand? The game is great. I highly recommend it. But if you're like leaning towards like I'd rather watch the show first, I would watch the show because I don't know how long in the show. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. I won't spoil The Last of Us 2, but there's like a thing that happens close to the beginning of the game, and I'm wondering how far into the second season they're gonna have that event happen.
Yeah.
So depending on that, you might get more mileage out of the show, and then you can go back and play the game because then your show is not going to cover the entire game anyway. So there will still be new content for you to experience in the game. Whereas going and watching Last of Us Season 1 and then going playing the game, like I think you get more mileage out of the show because there's just like more story there. They added new things to it, so you're playing the exact same story in the game, but then you're also missing out on like the gay episode, for example. Like that's barely in the game. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for season 2. I also, I mean, I haven't yet started the game, The Last of Us 2, but I did watch the trailer, and I do know some spoilers for the second game. So it looks really good from the trailer. I was really surprised, like pleasantly surprised to see Catherine O'Hara in a very like what looks to be a serious role. Because I mean she's such a good like she's got great a great comedic sense for her and for a lot of her characters that I've seen her in films for. But yeah, it looks like she's like, I don't know how major of a character she'll be, but in the in one of the trailers, or maybe a few of them, she just seems very like somber and serious, and I'm like, okay, this seems cool. All right.
Yeah, I know her as the mom in Home Alone first and foremost. So
Right,
like
yeah.
anytime I see her in anything else, I'm like, a mom from Home Alone?
Yeah. I always think of her as either Moira from Schitt's Creek or the mother in Beetlejuice.
That's fair too, yeah. I think a lot of people would definitely, especially recently, since Home Alone is kind of like in the zeitgeist, Home Alone is really only like Macaulay Culkin at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas Schitt's Creek is so recent, and Beetlejuice just had a sequel. So I'm sure a lot of people, especially in the last couple of years, are probably thinking like Catherine O'Hara from Home Alone.
Yeah.
You for real? Home Alone is so ingrained in my brain. That's all I know her from. But I know that she was part of the Second City crew of Canadians that
okay.
like included Eugene Levy, included I want to say Dan Aykroyd,
Okay.
Rick Moranis, John Candy. I think she might have been the only woman.
Oh.
Dave Thomas was another one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've named almost all of them. But anyway, all that group of comedians who are really not working together much anymore, except maybe Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. Um, the other one was Martin Short. I think
Oh,
Martin
okay.
Short,
You're
maybe.
right. Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually, in the new season of Only Murders in the Building, you can see Martin Short and Eugene Levy together again, which is kind of cool.
Oh, I need to finish that show. Well, I need to finish season 1 first of all, and then I need to watch the rest of the show.
Oh yeah, I won't say anything then about the newer seasons because like
Okay.
the first season is like you got to get through that, and then it gets into the anyway. I won't say anything. Let's move on. That's actually kind of like a slightly more depressing note here, but the first layoffs of 2025 are here, and they also come from a queer-friendly publisher, unfortunately. So Akupara Games, the publisher known for Sorry We're Closed, which is a popular queer survival game, they've eliminated 3 roles, which they announced via Twitter. Yeah, so it's only 3 roles, thankfully. Like, I don't know how big of a studio they are, so that could still be like, it's still be 30% of their publishing arm or whatever.
Yeah.
But they were a lot more like, at least, even if they're like, I don't know, but even if they're like lying on Twitter about like caring about how bad they feel, at least they pretended to care, which is a lot more than like. So there was another set of layoffs from Rocksteady, so the studio known for the Arkham games and the recent Suicide Squad game. They didn't make a statement. We just heard about it in the press from Video Games Chronicle. Just they laid off some programmers, artists, and QA staff, and that was 24 hours after Akupara Games laid off 3 people. But in Akupara's statement, they actually have an image here that looks really nice, and it's like multiple paragraphs, but they wrote, I want to take a moment to thank and appreciate the team members who are departing. They've made a real difference to our projects and our team. We'll be sharing LinkedIn profiles of these talented team members in the comments. If you're looking to hire any of these 3, I will serve as an enthusiastic reference. So like, just saying that, even if like, I'm cynical, I'm a little pessimistic, even if they're full of shit, at least they're like pretending not to be full of shit, which again is still.
It's very human. It's a very like, hey, like, the whole, like, I'm just reading the statement now. It sounds like they were kind of like, well, this is like we unfortunately have to do this. Maybe I assume for like financial reasons. It sounds like it anyway. And then at the very least, like putting out the statement like that. I don't know. I think that's really nice. I haven't actually seen many publishers or developers who have like, I guess, done that, of been like, hey, here's a LinkedIn profile. It's like, that's solid. That's really like supportive, I think. So I'm very optimistic. So you can be slightly like, cynical, pessimistic, and I'll be the optimist.
Yeah. I mean, even if they share the LinkedIn profiles, like the reference, like obviously that's very private. We'll never know. Unless the devs who were let go. They're thankfully, I think it's a good thing they weren't specifically named in the actual like statement. But I think if you on the tweet, I think if you scroll down, like there were the profiles there, so they at least did that, which was nice. Obviously, the whole situation is not nice. Layoffs are not good, and I can't believe like we're not even halfway into January.
Yeah, really.
This happened last year too, where there was like it was barely a week after New Year's, and there was already like big amounts of layoffs. I still think I feel like there's still less this year at this point than there were last year, but still the fact that I think I saw another one. I forgot to note it down where the third set of layoffs I saw were, but I think there was at least in that span of 24 hours, I saw 3 different things that were like, we're laying off people, and it was just like, are you fucking serious? Like, it's
yeah, that's unfortunate.
So, we have a bunch of quick headlines here. I'm trying a new thing where I kind of like breeze through a bunch because they're like smaller and maybe not worth talking about for as long. So the first one here is the Elden Ring Night Rain. The network test sign up is live and it closes January 20th. So I discussed this in the Game Awards episode, and now we know that the network test is going forward. You could sign up right now. You'll get to try the game early this way. So I think anyone who wants to like really love Elden Ring or love multiplayer games, this is probably for you.
Cool.
And when this episode goes live, it should be Monday morning on January 13th, Toronto time. So it's EST. You should have another week, I think, at that point. So like 7 more days to like sign up. And I think it was just through Bandai Namco's website, but I'm sure if you type it on Google, Elden Ring Night Rain, and I will also try to include the link in the show notes eventually. I mean, this will probably be too late, but I'm trying to get the website up this week for True Avatars. And if so, I'm going to try to include probably not the show notes proper, the PDF that I send out to my guests and my regulars, but I'm going to try to write up like a blog post of sorts that has like the URLs that I've referenced in the show and like just like sourcing things because I don't really have. I can put that in the show notes, but I'm trying to keep the show notes brief so when people are reading it, they just get the gist and they see the time codes for the like the timestamps. But anyway, maybe I should be including sources. I'm not sure, but the ethics of that. I don't consider myself a journalist, so I'm not sure if I qualify to like. Although I try to have journalistic ethics, and I try to like, I got this from this place, or I got this from this source, or this source via this, and I'm like, anyway. I'm making this quick headlines much longer than I need to, but Xbox also announced a developer direct on January 23rd. So like a Nintendo Direct, it's just like they highlight the developers in this specifically. I think there's lots of interviews, which is really cool because Nintendo would never fucking do that in a million years.
Yeah, really.
Outside of like a blog post after like 10 months after the game comes out. But, so this is going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK. That's not all time zones. This is just the ones that they listed on the actual blog post on Microsoft's website. So check out what time zone that is for you guys. But the games they're going to talk about are Doom: The Dark Ages from id Software, Set at the Midnight from Compulsion Games, and the one I'm excited about, it's not a queer game, I don't think, although I'm hopeful there might be some queer content in it, is Claire Obscure Expedition 33 from Sandfall Interactive. It's basically a decently budgeted, well, not decently, I say that because like it's not a low budget game, but it's not a high budget game, but it's more money for an indie game than you would expect because they've got like obviously some Xbox money, but this French developer is making basically a Final Fantasy and Persona inspired like indie RPG that looks so cool.
Oh, you've sold me now.
Yeah, go watch the trailer. I didn't even know it was
now.
This looks amazing, and it's getting a physical release. I think they also just announced a special edition, so physical games or collector's editions are your jam. It's getting some, and I think the special edition is exclusive to GameStop, unfortunately. But the physical edition is available from all the places we talked about in the holiday deals.
Oh, the holiday deals. Yes. Nice. Yeah, I'm just on the website for it right now, and I came across this really cool quote that they've just, like, you scroll down a bunch, and it's, I think it's like a monologue of some kind. Maybe it's like the prologue for the game, but it's quoted to say, "Once a year, the paintress wakes and paints upon her monolith, paints her cursed number, and everyone of that age turns to smoke and fades away. Year by year, that number ticks down, and more of us are erased. Tomorrow she'll wake and paint 33. Tomorrow we depart on our final mission. Destroy the paintress so she can never paint death again. We are Expedition 33. This game sounds sick. I need it."
Yeah, and it looks visually interesting. So I think Xbox is going to announce a release date in this direct. At least I hope they do.
Cool.
I also know since it's an indie game too that like they might not know. But if they're highlighting it in this big direct, like giving some kind of launch window at least it gets people's attention on it and makes people look forward to it.
Yeah.
So in addition to those three games, so Doom: The Dark Ages, South of Midnight, Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, there's going to be a surprise fourth game. So I saw some people online talking about how Xbox usually does 5 games in these developer directs they do in the beginning of the year. So people were saying like, oh, there's going to be more than just 4 games. And I'm like, don't get your hopes up. I think the fourth surprise game is going to be whatever it is. I saw some people talking about that it might be a port of a very popular Bethesda game, which I won't spoil because who knows if that's going to be it. But there is a game that's been like heavily leaking. That might be this, although the wording in the show, in the blog post actually, is more, it sounds like it's a brand new game, and I don't know if you'd say brand new game, if it was like a port of an older game or like a remaster. Okay. So, but whatever that fourth game is, it won't be Silksong.
Cool.
So much for quick. This one is going to be slightly longer, but it's still a quick headline, is that there's going to be a Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day, because it was leaked by a data mine. So, Matt Yukana, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but they're on Twitter. They've data mined the latest Pokemon Go update and discovered that there's going to be a Pokemon Presents, which is basically like in the Xbox Direct. It's a Nintendo Direct for Pokemon, and it'll be on February 27th, which is Pokemon Day. I think we were talking about Pokemon Day on a previous episode, and I didn't actually say it was February 27th, but that's when Red and Blue released back in 1996 in Japan. That's why it's Pokemon Day. So it was probably obvious to most people that there's going to be a Pokemon Presents, especially since this past week, there was no Pokemon trailer, which I speculated could be the other only opportune time to market Legends EA. So we're probably going to get that trailer then. But there were some other like leaks, news, hints at when Legends EA is releasing. So PokeBeach, which is a Pokemon TCG fan site that's been around forever. But anyway, he follows Japanese trademarks very, very closely for the TCG. And the TCG is always a good indicator of what the hell is going on in the Pokemon series of things, just like all this stuff that happens throughout the year, because the TCG is always very, there's a lot of brand synergy with Pokemon. Like, if the anime, if there's a new game coming out, like 2 weeks later, there's gonna be a new anime.
Yeah.
And, if there's a new anime, in a couple months later, there's gonna be a new TCG expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So, they found trademarks, and they never find trademarks out this early in the year for like 2025. So if Pokemon Legends ZA was coming out in 2025, or sorry, in holidays rather, the first set for that game, based on that game, would be coming out in January 2026, is what I mean to say. So these trademarks have been found now, and it's for a pair of sets called Mega Symphony or Mega Symphonia, and the other one is called Mega Braid. And the fact that there's Mega in the name of these sets means that they're bringing back Mega Pokemon from X and Y, which we know are going to be in Legends ZA, because that was like the big hook in the trailer. It was like, they showed the Legends, which I was like, yes, great, new Legends game. And then they showed this letter Z, and I was like, holy fuck. They're finally making the Z version.
Yeah.
And then they showed 2025. No, they showed the Mega logo, and they showed 2025. So it was like the Vince McMahon meme where he was like tilting his head back further and further as his thing closed. So for me, it was like, okay, Legends, Z, okay. And then they showed the Mega symbol, and it was like, cool. And they were like, 2025. I was like, holy crap, it's taking next year. But anyway, needless to say is that if Mega, this is my theory. I'm just going to read my notes now because I'm getting carried away. But the trademarks being available this early means the sets are releasing before the end of the year. And the TCG is usually about 2 months behind the games. So my speculation is that the latest main set of the year is October in Japan. So if this double set is out in October, which is the latest possible window, this means the games could release in August or even earlier if these sets are due in July, which is the other time that there could be a double set. They won't do a double set in August or September, at least historically speaking. They could change that, obviously, but the last time there was a double set, that was like not at the beginning of the year, because there hasn't been a double set yet. They haven't actually. There is a double set in June, I think, coming. That's anyway, Unova based, but we're not going to get into that whole thing in the Pokemon fandom right now. But anyway, I think October is the latest this is going to come out, possibly July, which means it's probably going to be a month or two behind Legends ZA's release, which means the game can come as early as May or June, or as late as, I think, August is like the latest possible time, which would be cool because my birthday's in August, and I'd be like, this new Pokemon game around my birthday is just
it was
like,
meant to be
on the top of a very good cake. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry. So, and then this next one I'm going to let you handle, Amy, because this is our last like quick headline. Xenoblade Chronicles X got a new trailer.
Yeah, so this is going to be a remake of Xenoblade Chronicles X, which originally came out in 2015 on the Wii U. The trailer they just released as of the day we're recording gives a more like fulsome, I think it's probably like 2 or 3 minutes long, gives a more fulsome look at how the game looks and everything that they've upgraded. It was nice to see that they made some improvements to the UI, especially with the text. I remember it being kind of hard to, I think it was kind of hard to read when I originally played it. But everything looks really nice. Nice visuals and all that. And like, honestly, like, I'm very glad. I'm very, very grateful, very glad that these Chronicles X fans are eating well this year. Cause I mean, it's been almost, it's been just, I don't know if it's exactly 10 years, but it's been basically that.
2015 was when the first one came out, like the original version of it on Wii U, right?
Yeah. I just don't know what month, but I don't remember what month. But really happy for them. I have played, I think at this point, all of the Xenoblade games that like starting from the Wii. I have yet to play Xenosaga and Xenogears, but so I had this on Wii U. Wasn't really necessarily my kind of game. There was a little bits and pieces here that I'm like, I don't know, I wish they kind of did this differently. And I mean, and I'm kind of I think I'm in the minority there. I know a lot of people really like X, so I'm like, I'm happy that it's releasing, and it's pretty soon, I think, at this point. I'm interested to see where that goes. I mean, I would be very interested if that spawns any ideas for maybe a continuation of X, because it seems like they kind of doubled down on Xenoblade, and of course made 2 and 3. 2 being, in my opinion, maybe a bit of a quick, they could have spent a little bit more time on it probably, and also wasn't really the sequel that I was hoping for. But then like 3 was, and I loved 3 so much. And And like I know like Monolith Soft, like they seem like really like nice devs. They do well by their staff from what I've read. So yeah, I think X should be a good time, and I'm happy for the people who are going to buy it and are very excited for it.
I think that might actually include me now because I honestly I haven't been too interested in the Xenoblade games, although I was happy to hear that like all four games now are going to be on Switch, which I think is really cool. It's like just having the whole series of something on one console is like really good. It's like I think the 3DS was like the best place to play like 90% of Zelda games, for example. So like if you're a Zelda fan, like most of the games are on there. So and I heard they fixed something about the UI and the battles. Maybe that
Yeah.
makes things easier.
Yeah, and they're also, I think, adding some new things too. Like, basically, I think they're doing the same thing that they did with the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, where they're remaking, like, you know, they're remaking the game, the look of it, and then they're also adding more content. That's probably going to be free, like, that's just kind of tacked on at the end. Because there's a new pilot, from my understanding. She's the one who, like, pilots, like, this white mecha, I think. And I think the very end of the trailer seemed to me like maybe like free LC. So, but I don't know 100% on that. I will say probably the things that kind of weren't like that I didn't really love about the game when I played it were like, and I kind of hope they like fixed this specifically was that, or not fix, but do differently. Was that for chapters you, I was when I was playing through like you want to level up your party as you're fighting with them. And there's a specific character who I just didn't really like. I wasn't really interested in learning more about him, and I didn't know if I loved his playstyle all that much, so I just didn't have him in my party. But he needed to be a certain level for me to advance the story, which means I had to put him in my party. And I was like, I don't want to like. So that was really kind of annoying. I hope they do away with that. I hope they're just like, hey, you know what? Like, do the auto leveling system like Xenoblade Chronicles 1 had, or like 2 and 3 did, where you go to an inn and you level up everybody at the inn or at the campfire, right? And it's just all at once. Whereas I can't remember if they had much of an auto leveling, but like even if they were out of your party, like in 1, 2, and 3, they just got levels. So I hope they do that. I also hope they have maybe more, if they wanted to do any new side quests, I kind of hope for more variety, because like I wasn't really a fan of like there was just so many side quests where like, I mean, so the thing with the whole like the premise of the game is that your home planet has been destroyed by these aliens, and you flee to another planet to set up for like you're like the last bastion of humanity, and you're trying to set up and survive on this new planet. And of course, there are native species to that planet, and so you encounter a lot of them. Some of them are aggressive, some of them are like super chill, and they're like, yeah, no, cool, like we'll live with you, and that's nice. But like so many of the side quests where you're like interacting with like the chill native species are like all the humans, well, maybe not all of them, a lot of them are just kind of like, oh, this guy's so annoying, I can't like understand what he's saying, and like, can you get him to move and all this stuff, or can you get him to do this? And I was like, this feels like oddly racist. Like, I don't know if I like this. So I mean, maybe I probably played about maybe like up to chapter 5, maybe chapter 4 of the game, because I think chapter 6 is where you need the party member to be like level 6 or whatever, and then I just said, you know what, nope. And I left the game. So yeah, just little bits and pieces there where I'm like, I don't know, like I sometimes like stories about colonization can be kind of tricky, I think. Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. Maybe if I hear more about the game, maybe I'll give it another shot. But yeah.
Sure. I mean, I just watched the one trailer,
Yeah.
so like I said, the only thing I really know about this game is through you. So,
Right.
this is probably one that I won't pick up at launch.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one game that I'll probably wait a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Maybe not a few years, but at least a few months, just to see if there's any kind of price drop or reviews, or
Yeah.
because maybe all the problems you have with it are still there. And like, to be honest, that would also stop me from playing the game. Is that there's
Right.
a party member I didn't enjoy playing as,
Yeah.
and then I had to suddenly like go back and like spend like hours leveling up one character.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm out too. So
But I will say, like, the music, the environments, like, all that is phenomenal in that game. It has such an interesting, like soundtrack. Just it's a bit of like R&B, bit of rap, bit of like rock EDM. It's just so interesting. It's very different from the music of like Xenoblade Chronicles 1, 2, and 3. And I would definitely recommend those games, especially 1 and 3. But yeah, it should be good.
So let's jump into this. I was hesitant to include this, just because like we don't actually know how much any of this is true, no matter how real it might seem, until we get confirmation from Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch 2. All of these rumors are just rumors, even if like you saw a video, but the Switch looks like the Switch 2 looks like online. Like anyone who saw that is probably thinking like it's probably true. And to be honest, I think there's a 90% chance that most of this is true. But I thought we'd talk about some of the rumors. Some people call them leaks. At CES, we learned a few things, and there's been some other leaks too over the holidays, or rumors I call them. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 rumors. And Amy, at any point, just jump in.
Sure.
But I'm just going to go through this list because there's like a bunch of things that happened here. The new Switch is going to be called the Switch 2. So like it's just like the Nintendo Switch 2. It's like it's the same logo as before with a 2 tacked on for the spot with the Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons are going to be gray like before, but it's much darker gray, and the buttons are colorful this time. So they're kind of inverting the style. So before you had a lot of colorful Joy-Cons with gray buttons, and now you're going to have a lot of gray Joy-Cons with colorful buttons. And the supposedly the colors they picked this time were orange and blue, which is cool because my current Joy-Cons are the orange and blue. So I'm just like, it's like Nintendo's personally making these for me. I'm just going to like enjoy that moment of like complete narcissism. The screen is much bigger this time. So the overall console is bigger. There are comparison images online if you want to look those up. It's really hard to describe on a podcast, especially with no video feed. The Joy-Cons are magnetic, so they just like kind of lock into place. The original Switch, for anyone who doesn't know or can't remember, the original Switch had rails that you slide on from the top. And then so at CES, this is where the big thing happened this week, is we actually saw like what was potentially a real console. We found out it was later a mock-up, but based on real specs. And you'll see why it's probably real in a second. But so Genki is an accessories manufacturer for the Switch. So obviously they're going to have accessories for the Switch too. And so they had this. First off, it was initially behind closed doors and people were just talking about it. But then Genki just brought it out onto the CES show floor and started showing people, hey, yeah, this is what the Switch 2 looks like. Here's how the Joy-Cons work. Obviously, it was a dummy model, so like you couldn't turn it on and like play games on it. But they initially claimed it was a real working console, and they had one, and they were just like, screw it, we're just going to show what Nintendo's working on.
Interesting.
Anyway, we obviously want to talk about games for this console. Everyone wants to know. Everyone knows that it's just a Switch. Like, we know what it's going to feel like to play, whatever. People want to know what the games are. And obviously, nothing from Nintendo's first-party thing is leaked, and it's probably not going to. And if it does, that's going to be one hell of a day on the internet. Let's just say that. But so someone found there's a bunch of different leaks that have supposed games, but someone on Reddit found a bunch of SKUs from a French retailer that could be legitimate because they are on the French website. I clicked through. These listings are on the French website. They have real SKUs too with them. It's not just like an Amazon placeholder listing that anyone can add. This is like seems to be people are gearing up to like get these games on the website for pre-orders.
Okay.
Walmart Canada has previously also leaked games on their website, so this has happened in the past. But there were SKUs, and there were no names with it. They were like dummy SKUs. So they said like Nintendo Switch 2 game from EA, Nintendo Switch 2 game from Square Enix, Nintendo Switch 2 game from Bandai Namco, Take-Two, and Warner Brothers. So those were the 5 publishers that had games listed. And someone else did some more digging and found that some of those SKUs have a similar series of numbers to real games from these studios. And the hypothesized that some of these games could be Tekken 8, Red Dead Redemption 2, and EAFC, which is what FIFA used to be.
Oh, okay. Interesting for a selection of games, yeah.
Yeah, and so like I could speculate on what the Square Enix, the Bandai Namco, and the Warner Brothers games could be.
Right.
And actually, I think Warner Brothers could also be Tekken 8, but obviously I think like the game that shall not be named is probably getting a Switch 2 port. I would be not sold so well on the Switch. I would not be shocked if it's getting a better scale port.
Yeah.
And then another leaker, or supposed leaker, Nate the Hate, again, people call him a known insider and leaker. We don't know how true this information is, no matter how many leaks this person has gotten right in the past. But they released a podcast and claimed that the following games are planned for Switch 2. And these are probably going to make your jaw hit the floor, or at least some video game fans, if you're listening. Because one of them is the Halo Master Chief Collection.
Yeah.
And it's also supposedly coming to PS5. So the fact that Halo that's like Mario
Opening up the,
PlayStation, right? So
yeah.
Microsoft Flight Simulator, which again is another Xbox PC exclusive, but again, seems like the kind of game that if it could run on any hardware, Xbox should probably get it on those consoles. Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming this year to the Nintendo Switch 2. And I know you're waiting on playing the original Final Fantasy VII, but again, if you're going to play a Final Fantasy game, portable is probably the best way because it's like an RPG.
Yeah. Well, I have it on Steam, and I don't have a Steam Deck, so I'm just gonna start playing it on my computer.
I think it'll probably run great there and it'll look great. So
yeah.
And then so that the remake is coming this year, and apparently next year in 2026, because next year is 2026 now. I have to remind myself that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming next year. Which makes some sense because if you believe the timelines, that 2027 will be when Part 3 comes out, and then that's probably going to be multi-plot, so then it would be coming to all consoles. So it'd be a good, like, play Remake this year, play Rebirth the year after, and then play whatever. I think it's probably going to be called Retribution on Switch 2 in 2027, so, or PlayStation, wherever you want to play it. And then the last leak was Gotham Knights was spotted on a developer's resume. Now, it wasn't specifically stated Switch 2, but there were 2 unannounced platforms that this dev helped port the game to. And currently, the only 2 consoles this game is not on are the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. So, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Where there's smoke, there's fire. This is probably coming. And again, Gotham Knights is a Warner Brothers game as well.
Yeah, so that would match with the what we were just talking about. Yeah.
And also there were Square Enix barcodes as well, or SKUs. So again, that could line up with Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think there's also a bunch of other Final Fantasy games they could definitely port over to the Switch that are recent and have also come to Xbox recently. So
yeah, it's interesting that we're getting with all of these leaks. I mean, I was thinking about okay, when could the Switch potentially release with all of these possibilities coming, and I mean I would. I mean, it'd be nice if it would release sooner rather than later, but the fact that they just haven't really built up a whole lot of official hey, the Switch 2 is gonna come 2025 or something, it's not a lot of build up necessarily. But I also don't really remember. I feel like the Switch had a lot more build up maybe before it released, but I could be wrong about that. The look of the I did look at the Genki model on the website, and I mean, it looks nice enough. I kind of don't love that it's not as colorful, but then again, I mean, I'm sure there'll be hey, cases that you can buy for Switch 2 Joy-Con or something, and I'm sure you could go on Etsy and people will sell that, or Nintendo will make more colorful stuff. The colorful buttons are interesting, but the lack of color, I'm just kind of okay. And then I think
they have to differentiate it from the Switch 1. I think it's just the idea here is and then maybe in a few years down the road, once the Switch is kind of off the market, and it's just the Switch 2, then they can kind of say okay, the floodgates are open. Here's your standard color Joy-Cons, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm just interested to see where it goes, because I feel like Nintendo has maybe a bit of a curse where they put out one amazing console and the follow-up is usually okay, it's just not as, or just doesn't sell that much. It was the Wii, which was great, and the Wii U didn't sell as much. I want to say N64 was awesome, but when GameCube released, it wasn't immediately flying off the shelves necessarily. But I mean, GameCube I know is a very loved console, so that obviously changed over time. And with it being just called the Switch 2, I'm just kind of okay. I was hoping for a more imaginative name, but I mean, then again, I was pretty wowed by Switch when it got announced. So yeah, we'll just see how it goes. I probably will wait a while to buy this if it's coming out this year. I might wait till next year, but we'll see. depends on like what they release with, because if they say like straight up like if they like cast aside their previous statement of like, hey, we're doing for Zelda games Breath of the Wild moving forward, or if they just decide to like announce a new Zelda that's like not that, or announce a 2.5D Zelda that's new with the Switch, I might be like, okay, maybe I'll get a Switch too. Because that would probably
I think we might have talked about this in a previous podcast, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to get this in there about Zelda. Brian P. Shea, who runs the All Things Nintendo podcast, previously worked for Game Informer before he was unfortunately laid off. He did an interview with Eiji Aonuma, I think when Tears of the Kingdom was launching. And he straight up, like, he was in the room and he had a translator there, or at least Eiji Aonuma had a translator.
Yeah.
So Brian P. Shea could interview Eiji Aonuma. And he asked, are you going to remake Ocarina of Time? Nintendo is very famous for like laughing things off, or like saying like no, or you know, we have nothing planned at this time. Like they're pretty good about just saying like maybe, but probably not, kind of stuff. But Eiji Aonuma straight up, apparently his tone changed and he said no comment.
Ooh, okay.
Which obviously you could read into what you want, but Brian P. Shea, who was there and he like saw the look on his face, seems to think that Ocarina of Time is a remake, might be like a Switch 2 launch title.
That would be pretty cool. I would buy that. I love Ocarina of Time, so.
So we have one more headline, and it's kind of important because our guest actually is from Los Angeles, where the wildfires are happening, and obviously it's a whole thing. Like I suggest you like go read up on the LA local news, go look up pictures. Like you should definitely be aware of what's happening, because like even though it's very local to California, and it's not about this headline is about developers being affected by it, but like just the fact that like our planet is coming to this, like we're at a point now where like climate change is like just like it's one of the worst wildfires ever. Right. And there's been a bunch of bad ones in the recent years, but like this one is like completely destroyed Los Angeles. So try to forget the like, oh, haha, the movie studios and the games or like whatever. Like it's like all the entertainment's like burned down. Like I don't care about the entertainment. Like, but like people are like, and like, oh, like all the celebrities lost their homes or whatever. But like there's also like a lot of like real people there that have also like lost their homes. I know people who've lost power. I think they've got it back on now, but like it's just been like very devastating. But as per Video Games Chronicle, some California-based developers, they are telling their staff to get to safety in the wake of LA fires. So this, I'm going to just quote the article itself instead of trying to like editorialize. But Riot CEO A. Dylan Jadea has posted. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, if I'm being honest, but it says A. Dylan Jadea has posted to LinkedIn to reassure staff to take care of themselves and that the mission, quote, the mission and the work will always be there, unquote. With that said, now to those around Los Angeles, it's please take care. Please follow. And sorry, I think this is still quote. I copy and pasted this terribly. What can be said now to those around Los Angeles is to please take care. Please follow the guidance of the local authorities and take the appropriate precautions to be safe. And while I don't have the right words by any extent, I do have hope and belief in the courage of our communities, belief in the strength of Angelinos. With certainty, I can say the Los Angeles will rise from this moment stronger together. And then unquote, that's the end of the quote. And then VGC says, they have been told by members of staff at Santa Monica-based Naughty Dog, who wish to remain anonymous, that plans are in motion for workers to leave should they need to. However, the fire isn't currently expected to reach that far south, and this article is a few days old. Things could have changed with no update from VGC or other outlets.
I was just gonna say that it's a shame. Like I haven't been super closely following updates on the wildfires, but I'm glad that like I've seen a lot of nice like good resources that have been put out and just like support, like just people reaching out hands to be like, hey, like if anyone needs any help, like or needs like a place to stay or something. Like I've seen a lot of that. Not specifically for like game developers, just people in general. But it's a shame. Like you hear more and more about these wildfires. I mean, in our case in Canada, there was I think a big one. I want to say last year, maybe the year before in Calgary, I think. But it's a shame, and I hope that like it's good that there's evidently like some good a good process in place, like for I mean, in the case of what Video Games Chronicle is reporting on, for like the staff of these game companies to be like, yeah, no, we're making sure that everyone is, is as safe as they can be, and that people, if they need to leave, then we're gonna follow protocol. Yeah, I do hope that that this I again, I haven't really checked any updates lately, but I do hope that the fires do die down very, very soon.
Yeah, I did after conducting the interview, and I think the wildfire started the day we were recording the interview with
Oh
Frank.
wow. Okay.
I didn't, and at that point, I was like so bogged down and like making sure like I was at work, and then I was making sure like the interview went off without a hitch. I was like a little nervous, for example.
Right.
So there's just a bunch of things that were distracting me. I didn't even wasn't even paying attention to the news. I
Mhm.
did reach out to Frank,
Mhm.
and I just asked him if he was okay. And so far they are. Him and his boyfriend are safe.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so
Good.
I feel a little guilty, like being like, all right, now we're gonna have this completely unrelated interview, but
Right.
it's a great interview. Please check it out. Frank is super awesome, and
Yeah.
I do want to just make like a small statement for the podcast here that today that like lives are far more important than like art and entertainment. And I'm certain all listeners are going to agree, but I also sincerely hope that everyone affected by the wildfires is safe and remains safe until the wildfire is put out. If putting it out at this point is even possible, it might just have to run its course. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. The mission and the work will always be there, which is from the statement from VGC and Riot Games. It's an important sentiment for any time that an emergency or disaster interrupts something that can be viewed as trivial compared to injury or loss of life. I hope listeners will take this to heart. Your job is never more important than your life. I've actually worked in places where there's been stuff going down, and like my boss has been like, yeah, no, we got to deliver this TV show. So you just keep going. And I'm just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely. Stay safe out there, everybody.
But anyway, Ekamy, that's all our headlines for today. So I just wondered if you had any final thoughts.
Just that it was really nice to talk about all these headlines. I was informed of some, not informed of all of them, and I really appreciate you having me on for this segment. And I am excited to listen to the interview when this episode is up, and I hope you listeners will also look forward to the interview coming up very shortly.
Yes. So thanks for slogging through it with me, Ekamy, and thanks for joining me for the first half of this episode. And when we return, I will have an interview with Frank Hopewell-Smith. And again, just to say that at the time of recording this, Frank is safe and unaffected. So yeah, please stay tuned after this musical interlude, composed by Diana Kotzin, and I'll be back with the interview. And I am back from the break, and with me is Frank Hopewell-Smith. Frank's pronouns are he, him, and Frank is a gay man originally from the United Kingdom. However, he currently resides in Los Angeles, California, working as a research director for 2CV, a global market research agency. Hi, Frank. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Zoe. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's so great to have you on. I've mostly spoken to developers so far, so having someone from marketing is really exciting.
If you say so. I mean, I work with developers on occasion. I tend to work with brand people a lot of the time, and developers are usually when they do get involved, it's a lot of fun, but they don't always love our feedback when it comes to what we have to tell them. But we work with them a lot of the time, yeah.
I can understand that. I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of before we started recording, you mentioned it was a very sometimes cynical role to be in. So
yeah, I think that's fair. It's not. I mean, it's not when everyone talks about working in gaming. I don't think that often their dream is to be in the marketing or the market research part of it, which is what I do. A lot of people want to be in the creative part of it or the development part of it, and part of my job is to help promote, help understand how to make games famous. And I'd say a big part of my job is actually representing the voice of gamers to the gaming brand and the gaming developers, so to understand how to get the best out of the game and how to promote it best. But also sometimes it's about where to take the game or the sequel as well. But really representing the voice of the gamer is how I see my job most of the time.
Yeah, before we started recording, you mentioned the every person gamer, which is an expression I really liked hearing, actually. I think that's really, it's kind of, well, it's kind of adorable, but I don't mean that in a belittling way. I like that as a good inclusive word for like describing, like, what the normal word would be like the everyman, for example.
Right, yeah, and I think that's a huge part of it is gaming publishers and developers come to us when they want to know more about what the gamer is thinking and what the gamer wants. And it's kind of representing that every person. Sometimes I do like different segments of people, so we might do big surveys in different markets, different countries, and try and understand how different gamers are in different segments. So you might have like, oh, the challenging combatant who's like a person who really enjoys playing against other players, or you might have like the solo puzzler who's like someone who like enjoys doing something by themselves and figuring things out. And so we can represent those types of gamers to the publisher so that they can understand a bit more about how to talk to them, and also target them with marketing as well in that kind of cynical way, and like finding out a bit more about them, meaning you can find the kinds of media that they enjoy and go through and communicate to them that way.
So you've talked a little bit about it so far, but I wanted to know specifically what exactly it is you do as a market research director. Or sorry, I got your title wrong there, but as a research director.
Oh, yeah, I mean, market research director. I've been a strategy director as well. There's a lot of different titles in my field. But as a research director, a huge part of my job is working with clients. And when I mean clients, I mean, this is usually video game brand managers, insights directors. Sometimes it's the game director as well. Sometimes it's the marketing director if they're a big enough, publisher or developer. And so my job is getting their business questions and finding a solution for that business question through the lens of gamer understanding, that kind of every person gamer, so that we can communicate back to them a nice kind of succinct story that is data based and information based and fact based, so that they can then action something and answer that business question. So a lot of the time, and increasingly at the moment, actually, a lot of it has been about audience understanding. And by that, I mean, like, a publisher might come to us and say, hey, I need to understand this kind of audience for a action RPG mobile game in South Korea, Japan, Germany, China, and the US. And, who is that audience? What is their demographics? What is their attitudes? What is their kind of motivations for playing games? That's a really big thing for my company, 2CV, where we work a lot with gaming motivations and understanding why people game. And so what we do a lot of the time is we create either like qualitative studies, which tends to be like focus groups or interviews a bit like this. I might be more like be the moderator like you're doing at the moment, Zoe, but that's more qualitative, where we might talk to people, and it tends to be like smaller numbers of people. We might talk to 4 or 5 people at a time, different subgroups of people, and then my main job is actually on the quantitative side, which is more big surveys. So at the moment, I'm designing a survey to talk to 3,000 people in the US and Germany, and Brazil, and what's the other market? I think it's Indonesia. And the idea is that we'll design a kind of 20-minute survey that we pay people to answer. And we'll ask all of these kinds of different questions about the kinds of games that they play, the motivations for their gaming, and why they game. And then also a bit about that, try and understand a bit about their life so that we can understand them as well. So my day-to-day is communicating with the client, making sure that things are moving in the way that we want them to be moving, that the surveys are being made to their liking. But a lot of it is also interpreting data. So I get lots of data back, whether that's recordings from these interviews or big, Excel sheets of data from these surveys, and interpreting that into something that's more consumable, more actionable, more understandable for them. So obviously I get reams and reams of this stuff, and I
can
pass it
imagine.
back to, there's so many different ways to cut data, and part of my job is using my experience from what I've learned. Statistical analysis as well. We have like a lot of analytics people on the team who help us interpret, understand all sorts of kind of big maths when it comes to, like, say, a big popular things like drivers, like understanding what drives someone's consideration of a certain video game, whether it's a certain imagery, whether it's a certain motivation, and just packaging that into something. Usually, I use a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of Google Slides, but I talk a lot and present a lot via webcam or in person. It used to be more in person before the pandemic, but making sure that it's something that they understand and they can do something as a result of it. We give them very strong recommendations and direction with, like, hey, if you want to sell this action RPG to these kinds of people, this is how you should talk about it. This is what they would like to hear, and this is where you can find them.
That's actually, I mean, talk about it, you say it's cynical, but I've done one focus group, and I've always found marketing and statistics very interesting. I kind of work tangentially a little bit into marketing. I'm a video editor, and occasionally we work on stuff that like goes into YouTube pre-rolls and stuff like that. And I've also spent a lot of time, especially in high school and university, where I would like look at marketing and how people kind of, not so much the creation of it, like your end of it, but how we interpret it as consumers. So I find all this very fascinating, actually. I could pick your brain for like years probably and never be done.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's when I'm interviewing candidates, the thing I always look for is curiosity. Like, I'm very lucky, actually. The other person I work with is also queer, so we work very closely together, and she's she immediately struck me as someone who was curious, and like, it's someone that when you get these sets of data tables back, it's not someone that's like, this is a job. You're actually like excited to find the results and see like how people think about it, how people reacted to whatever you showed them. And I mean, that's another big part of what we do, is sometimes we show them early concepts of games and get their opinions on it. And I've been doing that a lot with some of the big mobile developers, where they have a lot of ideas and they want to see which ones kind of resonate the most with audiences. And so that's another way that we do it. And it is really, really interesting. And we sometimes get to play, some of these early builds, or show, get to see some videos of some early developer stuff. And it's quite exciting. But as I say, sometimes, we have to be the bearers of bad news, which means we come back to the developers and say, look, we know you really love this, but people aren't really resonating with it, or for these reasons, and maybe you can try this direction and stuff like that. So we're not always everyone's favorite people. And it's the same with the creatives on the advertising side. If we're testing advertising for video games, we might come back and say like, hey, you need to make the logo bigger, and that's always people's least favorite feedback. But sometimes, we do such minute kind of testing where we might test something with slightly bigger logos, and it might increase the remembering of the brand, and that's really important in terms of then taking away and then going and making a purchase in the future. So we have to be the bad guys sometimes, and that doesn't always give us the best reputation when it comes to talking to creatives and developers.
That's totally fair. I mean, I wish I could have that kind of data for my podcast. All I get from Podbean is like a little graph saying like 8 people listened to it one day. And I'm like, I'd like to know what those people thought of it though. But,
right. Yeah.
So how did you find your way into this role?
So I have a pharmacology degree, which is very unrelated. And I studied pharmacology in London a long time ago now. But when I graduated, I actually did the same thing I do now, but for pharmaceuticals. And so I was working at a company, and they had Call of Duty project that they were working on, and they just didn't have anyone that knew anything about video games. And someone was like, Frank, you love video games, right? And I was like, yeah. And so I started helping them with that while I was still working on pharmaceutical based stuff. So usually I was talking to doctors and nurses about what they thought about the color of the packaging, or what they thought about this piece of particular, the way the medication works, and whether that resonated with them. And suddenly I started working on this Call of Duty project, and from there it just kind of kept going and kept, that we kept winning more video game stuff, and they kept needing me, and I just stopped doing the healthcare stuff and eventually became the kind of go-to video game person for the company in London. And then they had so many clients in the LA office that they moved me out there as well. So I moved with that company. It was called Hall & Partners back in 2018. And then I joined 2CV kind of a year ago. So I've been in LA almost 8 years.
Do you like LA so far?
I love LA. It works very well for me. London is very people describe it like New York, where it's quite high pressure, high intensity. And I think LA is a funny one when you're not working in the biz and show business. I think, and I guess I work in entertainment in a certain, lens, but how I think about it is I'm not in showbiz, and that kind of means that everyone else that in LA I find is a bit more relaxed about things, especially at the moment. I have a lot of friends. Well, actually, I have a few friends that work in show business that are actors or producers or directors, and it's pretty tough for them right now. So, things are tough for the gaming industry, and I certainly had a tough year last year. But LA has always been a very relaxed atmosphere. I love being able to go to the beach. I love being able to enjoy the sunshine. I was just back in the UK for 8 days, and I don't think I saw the sun the entire time. And then when me and my boyfriend got back to LA and we walked out the terminal and put our sunglasses on, we kind of, salutation to the sun was really nice, because it is something I really love. And I have made such wonderful friends out here. I think that's one thing. As someone, when you move country, I think it's very interesting because I've had straight friends that have moved country and really struggled to make friends and find a community, where they just kind of make friends with their colleagues, or and they've moved. I had a friend that moved to New York, couldn't really make any friends, stayed there for a year and a half and moved back. But when I moved out here, I just kind of embraced the gay community, and I made so many amazing friends and really close, very genuine people I find in LA that are very able to express themselves emotionally. That maybe isn't the most British way of doing things.
So back to market research. What's a typical day like for you?
I have a lot of meetings because I'm a more senior person in our company. So I have to do a lot of organizing and making sure that things are on track. So I start most of my mornings with some sort of team meeting, with whether it's with my team or a broader team. And also catching up, because I work in a global company as well. A lot of the time it's in the morning is about catching up with what happened from my colleagues who are based in Singapore or my colleagues who are based in London, and finding out, because I'm the last, right? The tail end of the time zone in LA, as it were. So they've all done most of their day. Certainly Singapore has. And then get the tail end of London. So I have calls a lot of the time early morning with London or some of my clients who are based in the craziest places. One of my clients at the moment is in Yerevan in Armenia. It's truly, everyone is all over the world now. And so a lot of the morning is calls, whether with clients or with the team just to make sure that everything's going on. And then kind of when it gets to lunchtimes, when I will start actually doing what I think is my main job rather than just meetings, which is making sure all those projects are going on track. I run multiple projects at once. But usually it's checking in, making sure that people are completing the surveys that we've put out there. And then it's developing materials for surveys. So whether that's writing the questionnaires along with some of my colleagues, a lot of the time, again, because I'm more on the senior side, I tend to review a lot of documents and making sure that we're asking the right questions, that we're going to be analyzing the data in the right way. And then a lot of the time it's also writing what we call either reports or debriefs, which is once I've got the data, it's thinking about the story that the data tells and putting that into something succinct, something understandable, something engaging, because that's what your clients will come back for, is if you can tell something exciting and something engaging and something useful, then they're going to remember that output, and they're going to, next time they have a business question, they'll be like, I know our last 2CV, they absolutely nailed it last time and told us, how we should do that. And with that in mind, a lot of my job is new business as well. So I have to talk to clients and kind of not harangue them, but, gently ask them frequently if they have any opportunities or any business questions. I might send them little tidbits of information around, like, hey, I was reading about this, that's interesting for you guys. Have you thought about doing these kinds of things? And then also writing what we call proposals is another big part of my job, which is where we get a business question from a developer or a publisher or any sort of brand. I actually do a lot of work for a gay social network that you've most definitely heard of as well. So I'll get a brief, what we'll call a brief from them, which describes their business need, so they'll be like, hey, we need to understand if this, this brand positioning, like how we're projecting the brand to the consumer, how is that resonating? Or we have different ways of how we might be able to do this. Help us explore that and make sure that we're doing it right. And then I'll go to our suppliers and I'll get costs, and I'll build a proposal that shows them this is how we'd answer it, this is the kind of time that it will take, and this is how much it will cost. So I have to do a lot of finance as well, unfortunately, but that comes with every senior role, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like you wear a lot of big hats.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually got hired to not do new business. That's never been a huge thing of mine, but as soon as I joined my company, a couple of people left and I had to kind of step up, and I've actually been doing okay at it. And that reminds me, I've got to send out some water bottles to EA to try and I've got some branded water bottles that I've made, and I meant to send them to EA up in Redwood Shores, because I'm quite friendly with the client up there, and I'm trying to get more business from them, and that's sending them little materials just to keep on their desk so they think of us when a question pops up.
That's fair. Yeah. So you mentioned Call of Duty, you've mentioned EA, you've mentioned mobile games. What kind of video games have you developed ad campaigns for? Are you able to talk about specific games or genres?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked a lot on Call of Duty because we used to do what's called a tracker, which is like where you interview people consistently month over month, and different people each month, but you ask them the same questions so that you can see how response is trending. And a lot of that with Call of Duty was keeping in times with their like release pulses, so like when they might do the reveal of the game and the title of the game, or that when it used to be E3, like their E3 reveal, and all those kinds of different pulses that they have throughout the year to make sure that we're understanding how people are reacting to the game. And it can be pretty interesting, and but like trends of data, it's funny, not a lot of people find that very interesting. I found it absolutely fascinating. But so used to do a lot of work on Call of Duty. I used to do a lot of work for a similar capacity at a different time for Candy Crush as well. So I worked very closely with King, and I actually used to go. I think we'd call it seconding, where I once a week I'd go into King's office, and I'd sit with them and help kind of making sure that all the data that we were collecting was resonating with them internally as well. It's funny. I know EA get a kind of bad rap in the public view, but they are so lovely to work with, and they really are very dedicated to making really great games, I think, and more so than I think a lot of people might think. And working on Apex with them, Apex Legends, was really important to me, particularly because of Gibraltar. I'm a slightly bigger gay gentleman, and seeing a gay character that wasn't necessarily, you know, this kind of stick thin, skinny guy that I don't necessarily resonate with, and I'm working on Apex and helping them develop part of Apex's positioning was really important to me. And they had a huge cutout of Gibraltar at their office, and I made my colleague take a picture of me in Gibraltar, which I still have. And it will always, actually, something that reminds me was EA was very insistent that we talk about the diversity in Apex and the stuff that's in that game, and that was an important part of the discussions that we had with gamers. And part of our data that came back was like, hey, you know, the diversity part of it sadly doesn't necessarily encourage engagement with the game. It doesn't detract from it, but it doesn't, and on a bigger scale, like from the data, didn't. And they actually said to us, they're like, that's non-negotiable for us. The game has to be diverse. That's a core element of the game. And that I thought was really cool and really important, and also shaped some of our future work that we did with them to make sure that we are, you know, talking to diverse voices and audiences as well.
Yeah, for sure. I made one comment today. Naughty Dog posted a tweet about Intergalactic, their new game, basically, which I'm excited about. I think it looks really cool, but
cool.
I decided to start putting True Avatars out there and responding to tweets under the True Avatars banner. And I just asked if the game would have queer representation. I was not expecting an answer, but I just wanted to get the comment under it. And within seconds, I had people like slamming me, going like, oh, the first thing that should be important is like the story and all these other things, like the music and the voice acting and all the creative stuff, not the representation. And I was like, my thought was like, well, it has all the stuff. I have seen the trailer. Like it looks like it has that. Anyway, but yeah, it just that all that is to say is that gamers are very vocal about, at least a certain audience of gamers are very vocal about not wanting to hear about diversity. So it's interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I have so many thoughts on what you've just said, and I totally agree with you. And the first thing that pops into my mind is that the diversity that we talked about when I was literally moderating these focus groups with these, you know, kind of very stereotypical straight white gamer dudes, and none of them batted an eye at it, really. They were like, oh, that's cool if this character's that way, that doesn't bother me. It's just not, you know, like they just wanted to spend more time talking about the guns or whatever. And it didn't put anyone off. And that was something that I found very relieving, given this was groups in major cities. We tend to do focus groups in major cities just because it's easier to get people into a central location. But I've never experienced the backlash that you do see online, these very vocal people, when you actually talk to them in person, when there's a name at the bottom of their screen, when there's a face to their picture. And it just I think it speaks a lot of the time to the cowardice of people that do want to kind of just yell hate a lot of the time. And that's something we talk a lot about with the clients, actually, is the vocal gamer that is online versus actually what most gamers think. And it's important to remember that, you know, at this point, I think we consider 50% of the US population gamers. And, that's if you're saying someone who spends, around an hour a week playing a game. And that's partly because of mobile gaming, right? It's so accessible and so many people are doing it. Like Candy Crush's target is 40-plus-year-old women. Like that's their target. It's not the under 35 male, typical that people tend to think of as gamers. And it's important to remember that gamers are incredibly diverse, that gamers are incredibly huge. There's so many of them, and most of them aren't going on to, GameSpot's forums and game FAQs and complaining and going on YouTube comments. And that's not most gamers. That's just this very vocal, kind of sad part of gaming that is incredibly vocal and wants to do that. So you have to sometimes split the perception of what you hear in the media and in the comments from actually what we see gamers say. And as I say, most of the time, the diversity is never something that bothers gamers on the whole when we talk to this broad, diverse audience.
It's actually really interesting you bring that up, because the last episode we recorded, my guest and I, Amy Lynn, we talked about the GLAAD gaming report that came out, I guess, about a year ago now. Just talking about queer representation in video games, and that what you said is completely true. They were saying the same thing in the report, that for the most part, gamers are not bothered by diversity and representation. It doesn't matter whether it's quote unquote shoved down your throats or it's just there kind of off to the side for you to notice if you want to. But yeah, so you mentioned like they just care more about the guns and maybe whatever specific part they're actually looking for, that as long as it's, anyway, I think it's just very interesting.
Yeah, it's also people want to hear different stories as well, and I think queer and different gender stories are interesting to people most of the time. Like I really love games where, it's interesting. Whenever I play a game where I can create a character, I do generally choose to be male to represent myself. But the funny thing is when I'm playing a game where I'm forced, in inverted commas, to play as a woman, I really enjoy it, and I love the perspective that it gives. And I heard you guys talk about The Last of Us on a previous podcast as well, and I am so intrigued how they're going to do season 2 in particular. But one of the reasons I loved The Last of Us was the perspectives of Ellie and Abby, and just being able to play as them. And I don't know how they're going to translate that to screen, because I had such a visceral reaction to that big switch. I won't do spoilers, but in the middle of the second game, I had such a visceral reaction. But then experiencing and playing as someone and inhabiting their body and being them is so different to just watching them. So I'm very intrigued if they'll be able to successfully do that, because I came away from that game enjoying the narrative so much from a different perspective from playing as two women, and I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, when I was right before my egg cracked in 2020, I think it was my egg cracked in August, and it was like spring. The pandemic had just started, and my partner was asleep on the couch. I popped on. I'd played Life is Strange 1 years before that. I liked it enough, but I was like, I was so deep in the closet, I wasn't really thinking too much about Life is Strange 1, but I had gotten the prequel on discount, and it's about two girls who fall in love. And I sat up all night. I finished the whole game in one sitting. Maybe it was 2 sittings, but I remember staying up till like 3 or 4 in the morning playing this game, and just like almost shipping these characters. Like I felt such a connection. Like playing as a woman in this game just really opened my eyes in a way, because I was like, why do I care so much about these two lesbians? I didn't understand it. I was feeling feelings I had never felt before, and I later realized why. But so that's why I do think it's good to always to try playing as other characters and other perspectives, because you don't know what you're going to discover about yourself.
No, exactly. And I think people mostly appreciate original stories, and because queer media hasn't necessarily been around for long, there's a treasure trove of wonderful stories to be told.
For sure. So have you worked on any games with queer themes or characters in the past?
It's funny. I think a lot of them have had some. I think the best example probably is Apex Legends.
Right.
I think a lot of the ones where it's the main. I've never worked with Naughty Dog, and I'd love to. But I'm trying to think. A lot of the time, it's more about representation than necessarily specific queer characters that we've kind of developed or helped develop. I think it's certainly something I'd love to do more of. It's funny. I'm very out at work, but I don't think I've ever talked to a lot of my clients about queer themes a lot of the time, other than EA on that particular example. So much of it is quite marketing focused or development focused that it hasn't always come up, and we're not always involved at that very early stage of development, where the idea is being developed. But increasingly I'd love to be more involved in that, but it's just not it's not something that I've necessarily done, I don't think.
That's fair. I mean, plus a lot of the games with queer main characters or like very strong queer themes, they're all in the indie space. So I guess you'd have to have a publisher come into 2CV that's working on one of these games maybe. And I feel like a lot of indie games are made and released and then find their publisher when they are moving to other platforms, for example.
Yeah.
And at that point, the game is done.
Right, and I think it's also, unfortunately, we're quite expensive.
Yeah.
Market research is an expensive endeavor. I'm tasked with trying to make millions of dollars across the year, and the luxury of being able to talk to gamers and do that is something that ends up costing money. And so we do tend to work with, the bigger publishers, which unfortunately don't seem quite as some of them are,
true.
but it's not quite as your point is that a lot of the queer themed games or the queer characters do end up being in more of the indie titles, which won't necessarily have maybe even a marketing budget, let alone a market research budget. So
that's fair. So when I sent you my list of questions, we've actually covered a lot of them. So I want to kind of take it to a bit of a darker spot. Well, it's a little dark too, because there's been, even today, it's January 7th when we record, and at the time of recording, I saw 3 different articles today with layoffs from different game studios of varying sizes. So I wanted to ask, because this is also a recurring theme in the podcast, have any of the layoffs or layoffs in general and the state of the industry and the state of the entertainment industry as a whole, has it affected marketing campaigns and branding or your interactions with clients?
Massively, absolutely massively. I had one of the most I joined this company beginning at the end of 2023, and 2024 was definitely seen as one of the more difficult years across our company as well. Luckily we did pretty well, but we definitely noticed a lot of clients were doing this project's no longer going ahead because of budget concerns, or we'd reach out to clients that we've done loads of work with in the past, and they'd be like, well, look, we're not going that direction anymore. Lots of games that got canned that we weren't, that we were working on, also where they decided not to release them. I lost a few colleagues as well last year. It's definitely been very tough. And I actually did write an article about Concord, because I thought that was a really fascinating point. And this, I will give myself some credit here. This was before the Game Awards and before the lead at Larian Studios made that amazing, what I thought was an amazing speech, at least. I was very lucky to attend the Game Awards with my colleague.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's in LA, so it's super convenient for me, but she flew over from Phoenix, and we went, and it was an amazing experience. And I thought that speech really resonated with me, because what I wrote essentially about Concord was that I could just for me, I could tell that like who were they making that game for? Like that's what I felt when I was looking at their games. That they'd decided they wanted to make a game as a service, or GaaS as we call it in the industry, GaaS, game as a service, and that was the development structure for the game. Was like, hey, we kind of want to make a Destiny-like game that keeps earning us money throughout the next several years. I don't think they approached it from a development point of view of, this is an exciting game that I want to make as a developer. And I think when you make a game on that basis, when you're just thinking about how this can generate revenue over time, you're severely hamstringing it. Not saying that it can't work. And I've seen plenty of times where games have been developed with a particular type of business model in mind or monetization in mind, and it works. But I do think that it is a kind of, you're hamstringing your developers into making something that they may not necessarily be passionate about. And I believe at the end of the day, entertainment in all its forms is really about art and passion. And if that doesn't translate across the screen or the page or whatever your type of media, it's not going to be a great piece of entertainment. And I think that was a huge thing that I took away from Concord, and it really made me think about my role in the industry as well. Like, what am I doing when I'm feeding back on, an artistic development that, okay, look, 1,000 people said that they didn't like it, but this was someone's real passion project, and so I think that's a really important message and something that I've carried with me from a very, very difficult year last year. But I will say it is looking better this year already, and things are looking a little rosier for us at least. But we're still weathering the storm for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that a lot of this is just the over hiring and the over ambitiousness because of the pandemic, because game spending went up so high in 2020 and 2021, and then obviously people are back to work. People aren't spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at home. So people are spending less money on games, playing less games. I'm hoping that it's just stabilization and things will be steady from here on out. But I'm also just cautious because you never know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that there are some, I think also this, as gaming becomes more and more mainstream, the kind of big wigs at the top, for want of maybe a nastier word, you could refer to them as this, have that, they see the dollar signs in the eyes, right? And they're not necessarily understanding gaming, but they understand the money that it can make. So I think there's a kind of maturation that needs to happen, maturing of the industry, but it also happens at a time where we're recovering from a massively over expansion. And it's funny, during the pandemic, I did so much work, and I worked a lot with like esports as well. And it was interesting, one of the esports teams I worked with was like so convinced that what they had was like lightning in a bottle and it was going to be absolutely amazing, and they're going to keep the pandemic is just the ignition, not the kind of temporary trend. And and we kind of worked with them a bit, and then it fell off very quickly because they ran out. So it's just one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, in sort of a darker topic here, but queerness in the entertainment industry is also very turbulent, especially in response to the U.S. election results. So, as we know, Donald Trump got elected, and some of us are surprised at how it happened in the first place. But since his win, he hasn't even been inaugurated yet, but we've already seen Disney change 2 projects to remove specifically trans femme characters from projects, including a Pixar project. And obviously Disney does make some games, and this is obviously we're talking about TV shows, but I feel like this is going to bleed over to video games too. And I'm just curious how you think this will affect games and the games industry, especially on the marketing side of things.
I really think it will. And it makes me very, very sad. I I really couldn't believe it when it happened for me and my partner here. We were very, shocked, and I think we, lived in our bubble of California and LA, and where we are in Pasadena is very, everyone had Harris Walls signs out, and I think, it really struck me today was the Facebook announcement today about removing a lot of their chat moderation and fact checking, and how that's being celebrated. And it boggles my mind. Like, how can you want less fact checking? And I think that is unfortunately how, big companies want to appease this giant administration that is America. And, it certainly made me slightly less happy to be here as someone that's abroad. But, I have my green card, and I constantly tell myself, like, California is wonderful, and that, there is an army of lawyers to protect us from the Trump administration. But I definitely think it will, unfortunately, inhibit queer media, including gaming, for the next 4 years, certainly, because I think that's how people think that's what will make money, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially since video games take so long to make now, like the bigger games too, that, we're going to see these effects for probably more than 4 years, because, games that start development, games that are early enough in development right now to change direction, to remove any queer representation they feel is going to harm their budget. So I don't know, how early on in a game's life development cycle do you tend to come on? I guess it probably varies, right?
It completely varies. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the big project I'm working on at the moment is like even pre-game conception. So they just know they want to make another game, and what we're doing is talking to people about the different kinds of combinations that they want to see in a game. So, we joked about it early on, but maybe it's Space Vikings tower defense, what does that concept mean to people, and what does that look like, and would that resonate with people? So we're looking at different combinations of themes and mechanics and things like that. So it's very like early on, and to kind of help inspire the development team with different themes and directions they could go. And then, the cynical amongst us might say, well, that's just, using data to create a video game rather than passion or creativity. But I'm hoping that it's not the be all and end all, and there will be absolutely be developers that want to work on those kinds of themes. But so that's like the earliest stage. All the way to, brand and advertising reviewing and assessing, which is like after the game has been launched, and, like, okay, the ad has been shown in the public. Like, what does that mean for different people when they look at the advertising? And that's post-game release. And then sometimes it does come full cycle where we might be looking at a sequel. Like I worked on, what was the first Destiny expansion called? I can't even remember now, but I worked on that. And, we were looking at what worked in Destiny 1 and what people wanted in the expansion, which essentially was like more story, more understanding, and we helped kind of put that into the game. So it kind of is full cycle. Whenever you can put the game's voice into the development or the execution of the game is when we come in. So it's throughout. But I think so. We will. I mean, hopefully there's a few games that have already been, like signed and sealed, so that they will still be going out. Like, for instance, Intergalactic, I thought that looked amazing, and I still can't believe the weird backlash that got. And I feel like Naughty Dog is someone that will always stick by their guns, at least.
I mean, I hope so. Especially, you mentioned The Last of Us Part 2, like Season 2. I really hope. Obviously, there might be translation issues with going from game to screen and how you experience that. But I really do hope they stick with the story they wrote in the game, because I think it's so powerful and people need to see it. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, there's a trans character in Last of Us Part 2, and I can't see them removing that from the story, right? And what that means for their next games and all of that. So that's an important part of their storytelling, and I think that's, again, we're saying is like, these are such amazing, interesting perspectives. You can't, there isn't that many stories to tell in kind of just normal culture. It's so great to embrace the things that are different and interesting and new, and I think that's so important. And I think a lot of them will stick by their guns, but I do think we will see people being hesitant to express themselves, and I think that will start, potentially with queer people in the industry as well. Like, maybe they'll be slightly more, feel like they're not able to tell that story and it won't resonate, so they won't speak up at that meeting, and they'll tell a more, usual story, and maybe it's not as queer based, and then that will trickle down. But I do have hope for the future that when, something maybe more progressive happens and we are past this administration, that things will start to be able to be told, and people feel more comfortable with telling it. But and I don't want to force people to say you have to be brave and tell it as well, because everyone's got their story to tell and their reasons to be who they are. And it's a very kind of sad 4 years to look at, but I do think it will always survive, and it may not thrive, but I think it will, queer stories will always be there to be told, and I think there's still a bright future for it past these 4 years.
Absolutely. We've always been here and we will always be here.
Exactly.
So we're just about up on time now, but I wanted to ask one question that I didn't actually get a chance to ask at the beginning, and it's a much lighter question, don't worry. I wanted to ask what kind of games you like to play.
Oh goodness, I play so many different kinds of games. I'm always drawn to RPGs. I loved Baldur's Gate 1 when I was a kid, and I was way too young to play it and didn't really understand it. And I called things like charisma and dexterity. I didn't even understand what those things were. So I've been a huge RPG fan since I was a kid, and I had emulators on my PC as well, playing like Seiken Densetsu and all that kind of stuff on the Super Nintendo, or the SNES as we called it in the UK, where I believe my American friends call it the SNES, but we called it the SNES. But I wasn't actually allowed a video games console until the PlayStation 2, because my dad really didn't like them at all, and he'd always say, "Hey, go outside, kick a football, enjoy the outdoors, read a book, do something that's constructive." And he actually is very, very supportive now, and always has been. It was and he laughs and jokes about it with me as well, and he tells the story to his friends, like, I tried to, now my son resisted it and has now made a career of it, so what do I know? So he's very he's very good, but he used to play some games himself, and I think that's what maybe put him off. But yeah, at the moment, weirdly, I'm playing a lot of Marvel Rivals. I'm really enjoying that. It's just complete chaos and a lot of fun to play with my friends. And then Stardew Valley, I'm playing.
Valley.
Yeah, it's funny. My colleague got me into it. I saw she had the board game behind her on her webcam at work, and I was like, "There's a board game for Stardew Valley?" And she was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I've played Stardew Valley so many times." She's like, "I love it so much." And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna give it a go." And I played it on my flight back home, and I got absolutely hooked. And I'm in my second year at the moment, and just absolutely loving it. So it's a really nice kind of cozy difference to Marvel Rivals, but my standout game of recent time is Elden Ring. Blew my mind, that game. I wasn't even really a big Souls-like person. I'd play them, but never really complete them. But Elden Ring absolutely blew my mind, and I loved that game. I ended up platinuming it and finishing the DLC and all that. So it's been a lot of Elden Ring recently, but now it's Stardew Valley and Marvel Rivals.
Oh, I guess just one tiny little question I wanted to ask you. How did you feel about seeing the Elden Ring DLC up for Game of the Year?
I loved it. I was like, this is a great game. It's a game in its own right. Like I understand people's dislike of having a DLC. Maybe they should have handled it better, I feel. I mean, at least it didn't win, so people can't be. But I think it sets a precedent that I think if a DLC is big enough and it's exciting enough and it adds enough content, why can't it be? And they could have easily have just called it Elden Ring 2, and in a very cynical way, and just slapped that on it. That's what they'd have done in the past. But I think they could have handled it better, I think. But I think it was a great game and deserved to be nominated for something at the very least.
I love your excitement. It's so infectious.
Well, thank you for chatting with me. I've really, really enjoyed it. I always like talking about myself, so I'm that kind of person.
Well, you do such a good job at it. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Your answers were amazing. You gave us such good insight, and I'm excited to get this episode out into the world and share your story with everyone.
Yeah, I'm really honored. Honestly, that's how I feel about it. And just thank you so much to reaching out to me.
Absolutely. And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks for joining me for another episode of True Avatars, a queer video game podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating or review on your preferred podcast platform. You can also find the show on Instagram under True Avatars, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word. We also have a Facebook page which can be found by searching True Avatars, a queer video game podcast. Please ignore the fact that I've barely posted anything yet and give the podcast a follow and a share if you can. Oh, and also, a website is coming. Hopefully this week or next, depending on a few small variables. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or a games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. So bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.